I'm making this video so that others that may be out there suffering from the same situation can know they're not alone. I'd be interested to hear from anybody else with their experiences of drug addiction. I'm hoping it might help others that have similar problem. I'm hoping it'll help other people with similar problems with a friend or loved one that is addicted to drugs. You have to understand that the power that drug dealers have over their customers is immense. The whole day revolves around getting drugs. There's no time for anything else, not time for food, not time to talk to friends, not time for anything. The only thing that is of interest is getting drugs. By the end of this video, I'm going to look a bit stupid, I think, but I think I'm going to just accept that. So, just over 3 months ago, I moved into a crack house. It wasn't intentional, I assure you. I was in the south of France, and a friend from 10 years ago was texting and calling me. This had been an ongoing thing for the previous 10 years. And even though I'd said I didn't want to keep in touch, he kept calling, he kept texting every now and then. Sometimes it'd be a year between one text and another. Sometimes it'd be a few weeks. Anyway, we were talking. I was parked in a car park a couple of 100 meters from a lake, which was in the south of France. Beautiful place to be. I walked down to the lake to have a wash every morning or every evening whenever I felt like it. I cooked food. I was in a car park where hardly anybody else was. It was absolutely fantastic. So why I would give that up for what became my life, I'm beginning to wonder why I would do that. After a couple of weeks of texting backwards and forwards, we agreed that I'd come to England and stay at his apartment and see how things go. Now, I had already heard that he was, or understood, no, from what he was talking about, I understood he was on drugs. But I thought it was going to be kind of like it was where we left off, that it was all recreational, bit of drinking here, maybe a recreational drugs. So although I wondered about it, I decided to, give the benefit of doubt. I had to wait for quite a while because the dog needed vaccines, and so I had, I think it was about 3 weeks to kick around. So I drove slowly up towards the coast, a bit faster than I would normally have done, because to be honest, I was looking forward to it. And I drove up towards the coast and found myself at Dunkirk, where I parked on the beach. There's a kind of a boulevard, and by the side of it you can park your car. Quite a nice place to sit, but it's very windy, so the wind really killed me off. November 9th, I boarded the ferry and drove the 2 hours or so to Grantham, parked up outside the block of flats where he lived. We were all smiles after such a long time. I couldn't believe that I'd taken the step to come here, and I was a little bit reticent, to be honest, but I thought, well, we got on well before, so maybe it'll be okay this time too. So we walked in through the street door and into his apartment, and it was disgusting. There's really no other words for it. The pans half full of food strewn all over the place, washing stuck in every corner of the anywhere that it fit. In fact, um, that was true of every room. The kitchen was full of rubbish. The kitchen was full of mouldy pans and plates. The bathroom even had plates been pushed into or dropped into the basin and left just to mould. In the front room, there was clothes strewn everywhere. There was just nowhere to move. A bit back, I told myself that it was a temporary setback. All we had to do was start in the bathroom and work our way through over the next few days. Well, it was me that did it, while he was smoking crack the whole day. The washing machine was in almost constant use, but starting in the kitchen, I washed and scrubbed the mouldy food. I even threw a few pans away. They were so disgusting. I persuaded myself that once it was all clean, it'd be easy enough between us to keep it on top of it. I thought, well, if I buy food, that's the thing that he needs the most because he is paying his rent, water, and everything else. So if I bought food, I thought that would be a good way to help him out. Um, I did think about just saying I'll pay half the bills and everything, but I didn't really know what I was coming into. Uh, Maybe it would have been better if I'd have done it like that, but I didn't. I decided to buy food, but even the food became an open checkbook. So I'd spend £100 at the beginning of the month, around about, to buy food, and then I'd be topping it up for £10 here, £20 there, £15 there. So I'd be spending about £200 a month on food, half of which was supposed to be mine, but I hardly ever ate any of the food. I'm quite happy with bread and cheese. He kept saying to me that buy high protein foods because that will make the cravings less intense. So I, like a fool, looking back, hindsight is great. I bought high protein foods, especially for him, put them in the fridge, told him they were there, he could eat those whenever he wanted, and I just carried on. I just bought normal food for myself. Unfortunately, this high protein food that was supposed to help with his cravings didn't. That was obvious. When I look back on it now, it's obvious that it would never happen. But at the time, I was hopeful. At the time, I was thinking, well, you never know. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Then came the first time he asked to borrow some money. I thought I was helping him out, but £5 here and became £10 the next week. Needless to say, the money was never paid back. He promised it always. Yeah, I'll pay it back. I'll make a direct debit. I'll make sure you get paid before I need any money. But I never saw any of it again. So the one time he asked for money again, I sat him down and told him that I wouldn't support his addiction, which you have to do. You can't support these people. If you give them £5 worth of eggs, then they'll eat the eggs and spend the £5 that they've saved on drugs. And this was going on constantly. I was looking at it and I was thinking, does this ever come to an end? And that it makes you realise how abused wives or husbands stay with their partners thinking, oh, it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll get better. But it doesn't. Not without. If in this case, if he didn't want to stop, he wouldn't stop. He'd boast sometimes that, oh, I've only bought one lot today. Well, one lot £5, one lot £10, or even one lot £20. That was never made clear. But he was apparently spending several £100s a week on drugs. At one point, he cut down quite drastically, he said, but it wasn't enough as far as I was concerned. So this is how it goes. Excuse me. So this is how it goes. He gets his benefit money, and the week before, he has spent all of that money already because he'd been buying his drugs on tick. So the money gets in benefits, he has to give over to his drug dealer or dealers. So then he starts buying his drugs again on tick. So by the time he gets paid again, all that money he's got from benefits has gone again, and he's got nothing left. And obviously this is where he thought I was going to come in, that I was going to help him out with his drugs, I was going to help him out with buying food, I was going to help buying, doing this and doing that. But I told him quite categorically I was not going to help him in any way to support his drugs. And initially he seemed to accept that, but you could tell over the next few weeks that he was getting a little bit tense because he had no money and he wanted drugs, and he couldn't buy any drugs because he'd reached his amount with his dealers. So sometimes he really did have no money whatsoever. So what had happened was he called his mom or friends. First he called friends. Friends were always the first people he called. And they're all drug addicts as well, so they got no money. And unless he catches them just at the right time when they've had benefits paid out, but they're all drug addicts themselves, so they pat each other on the back and tell each other how good they are with each other. Can you lend me £100 or £20 or whatever it might be? And that money doesn't get paid back either. So they all owe each other money, but are telling each other how wonderfully good they are with each other. It's quite an eye-opener to sit there and actually watch it, because with one friend, he had probably about, in 1 week, 4 or 5 phone calls with this fella, and they had exactly the same conversation every time. And when I pointed this out to him, he said, yeah, of course I know that's what's happening. Then why do you do it? No answer. Of course there isn't. Then one day on the side, I found a water bill where he owed, I'm going to say several £100 here, but I think it was closer to £1,000. And I thought, well, should I start paying the utilities and the rent? But then it would be like, yeah, you pay half of this and half of that and half of that, but buy all the food. So it was a very difficult situation, how I was going to transition from just buying food to paying rent and stuff, or paying his bills. And I heard him on a phone call talking to this one friend who he owed £200 to at the time. And they were clapping each other on the back, obviously. It was a phone call, but you know what I mean. And he was saying that the utilities won't get cut off because he's vulnerable. Well, the only reason he's vulnerable is because he takes drugs. And how many people do you see out on the streets taking drugs because they can't keep payments up on rent, on utilities, on food, anything? So eventually, vulnerable or not, you're going to end up out on the street. And this is one other thing that I started thinking about, that if he didn't pay his bills, either utilities will get cut off or he'd get thrown out the apartment for not paying, because he'd already had a couple of letters referring to the fact that he hadn't paid rent, and he blamed the council for changing the way they pay his rent. But I didn't say anything at the time, and I thought, well, let him have his way. Oh, dear me, I'm feeling stupid just as I'm talking away all of this. Then a day or so later on the floor, I found another letter, which was rent arrears. It was over £1,000. I think it was £1,400. So I got £1,400 for rent arrears, several hundred, let's say £600 for water. I don't know what he got for electric or gas. I never saw a bill for those. But he's owing £200 to a friend, owing £200 to his dealer. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to get into that situation? In many ways, it's wrong to say that, because it's an addiction. It's not. I mean, people talk about it as being an illness, or a disease, I think they call it actually these days. But there is a certain amount of choice. I mean, yeah, okay, you take the drugs, and you puff on these things. I'll just explain this quickly because I'll come back onto this on another video. Puts an absolute minute amount into his little pipe, puts a flame over it, and obviously smokes it. And apparently the high will stay for about 15 minutes. After which time, either you have to lay it aside or you take another hit, and so on and so on and so on, which is why quickly comes up to a lot of money. But what I was noticing with him was that it was just an addiction. Yes, it was just an addiction. It was a habit. He'd get up in the morning, clean his pipe out, smoke whatever he could get out of the last residues of his pipe, and then get on the phone to his street dealer to get some more, without even thinking that he's not paid any bills. So, yeah, after 3 months, I was watching this, listening to him saying, "Yeah, I'm going to quit. I'm going to cut down." Cutting down would have been good enough for me, but he was insisting he was going to stop, and that meant that instead of smoking crack, he'd buy weed. Now, where the logic to that is, I don't know. So instead of spending £20 on crack, he'd spend £20 on weed, and so on. And a couple of times I went into the bedroom and he's sitting cross-legged on the bed, and he's bent over and his head is resting on his legs, and he's not moving. And when I asked him if he was all right, he just lifted his head and just said, "Yeah." So I started racking my brains as to the best way to help him out. Thinking about the bills and the money he owed, I decided that I'd pay half the rent and bills, and we'd buy each other our own food. And I floated this with him, and he agreed to it. But then I'm not so sure that he really knew what he was agreeing to, and even if he had agreed to it, that he remembered agreeing to it. So maybe I should have been more definite. Look, see, giving myself the blame for things that he's doing. It's not my fault. I said to him that because things were getting a little bit ragged, I said to him, look, what we could do is try and work out our differences. You got till say 30. I picked a date out of my head, out of the air really. 31st of March, I would either leave or he would have stopped with his drugs. I didn't want to say I was thinking about paying his bills because I was sure if he knew I was paying half the rent, which was about £43 a week, if he knew I was paying £43, he'd calculate that in to his drug buying, so that I'd be paying £43 a week. He wouldn't be paying anything, but he'd have £43 more that he could pay to buy drugs. So I didn't want to say I was thinking about that really, but it was difficult to work out how was I going to stop paying for the food. How was I going to get myself out of the £200 a month food bill? So I was thinking about this the whole time, and yeah, and this was just before Christmas. So just before Christmas, I ordered £100 worth of food. On the same day, his mum came round with a boot full of food, and literally a bootful. I wandered out innocently. I saw him out the window taking bags out of his mum's car, and I wandered out innocently and offered to carry some of the bags in. His mum looked at me a little bit strange, and I said, what are we going to do with the £100 worth of food that I've ordered? And she looked at me as though I was totally crazy. What do you mean? She asked. I'd heard him talking on the phone the night before, saying how he always bought the cheapest food. He was never smart enough to keep his conversations quiet. He nearly always had them on speaker, so I could hear both sides of the conversations, most of the conversations he had. He asked me why I hadn't said anything about ordering food. I could have asked the same question of him, of course, but he's accusing me of not telling him that I was buying food, and therefore his mum had to step in. So I asked him while his mum was standing there a little bit shell-shocked. I said to him, when's the last time you bought any food? He said, no, I bought food the other day. What, you bought food for yourself the other day? I just shook my head. I honestly didn't know what to say. I thought, right, I'm going to get this all sorted out, get it so turned out. So I turned to his mum, who was still standing there a little bit agog, and I said to her point blank, you know that any money that you lend him goes straight on drugs. And she looked at him and then looked back at me, and I said, I bet you never get that money back either, do you? No, she said. So then she said that I'm not lending you any money anymore. That was it, finished. And I thought that was good. That was one avenue where he couldn't get any money. His sisters didn't pay him any money. His mum now wasn't going to pay him any money. Hopefully these other friends weren't going to pay him any money because he owed them so much already. And he turned me and started getting quite threatening, to be honest, that I want to punch your lights out, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I thought, you know, you're a drug addict. Leave it. So I carried a few bags of shopping in, and left him alone with his mum. So I don't know what they talked about after that. It was only about, I think, I don't think it was the next day. I think it was the day after, it was the 24th of December. And I was in the bedroom and he wandered in with several sheets of paper looking all very officious. And it turns out it was a printout of his rent account. And he looks over the top of the sheets of paper and he says, "You haven't paid any rent this week." We had had another disagreement the day before when he told me that the apartment was his, implying I had no rights, and petulantly said not to pay rent because obviously that would take the power away from him. I reminded him of this and he wasn't pleased and said I should move out. He had a party he wanted to go to and he wanted me to pay him the rent money so that he could go and buy drugs and alcohol to go to the party with, and I refused. I said, if I'm paying rent, I'll pay it direct. I'm not giving you any money. So he I wouldn't say he got aggressive or anything, but he wasn't a happy chappy, let's say it like that, because he realised then that he couldn't get anything from me. What I had was I'd bought a bottle of Jägermeister and I'd drunk half of it over the previous couple of days, and he was complaining that he wanted to get some alcohol. He wanted the rent money so he could get alcohol to get drunk to go to this party. So I offered him the half bottle of Jägermeister. I said, "Take that." And I said, "I'm not bothered." And he said, again that he wanted me to leave. I mean, theoretically, he had every right, I suppose. I mean, I wasn't on the tenancy. I was just staying there. So the next morning was the 25th of December. I knew he wasn't going to be back very early because he'd have got himself so wasted that he wouldn't have known what he was doing. So I got up about, I don't know, it was about 9 o'clock, maybe 10, and collected all my stuff together, piled it into the car and drove to a small lay-by and tried to sleep in the car. The following morning I'd slept some, but not much, and I decided to call the council for emergency housing, just on the off chance that something might be done. And to my utter surprise, they put me up in a motel for a few days. So that's where I am now. You can see the motel around me. Now, if you'd like to know how a drug addict's day runs, I suppose you have to wait for the next video. I don't know if this is going to help anybody, but it might be something that other people are struggling with or not sure of how they should go forwards. So hopefully this will help. Please do write in the comments. See you next time.